We are always in a state of trying to solve problems. And those problems can be from any area of our lives. It can be our health, it can be financial, our jobs, families, love life. We're always trying to solve a problem. It's a perpetual problem. We're always trying to solve something. We're always trying to get to a place of peace. And when you think about it, we haven't always been in that situation. If you were born in the right scenario, under the right circumstances, you didn't have a care in the world. You didn't have a problem. You didn't have a problem until society gave you a problem or your parents gave you a problem. And then you get to a certain age and you say to yourself, well, these are problems that were given to me, so I'm going to solve them all and enjoy the rest of my life. And so you go through this phase where you're untying the knots that were done to you. And in the process, you're tying your own knots. You're creating problems for yourself now. And then you wake up one day and you say, my goodness, look at all of the knots that I've tied myself into financially, relationship-wise, health-wise. Okay, now I'm going to get myself out of all of these knots. So now you have another problem, which is to untie yourself from the problems that you have created for yourself. And you're thinking, okay, so now that I've done this and now that I'm untying these, it's time for me to get ready for retirement, which is another problem in itself. You want to be able to retire when you're older so you can be at peace. You're close. You're finally close to the peace that you had when you were a child, where you're carefree. Your money's intact. You have your home. You have your family. And even if you get to the point where you have solved all of your problems and you can sit down and you can just breathe a sigh of relief and you have no more problems, the irony of that is that you will create another problem, because you will have the problem of boredom. You will create another problem because you will have nothing to do. And the one thing that a human being needs, the one thing that a human needs is a problem. Because if you have no problem, you have no purpose. And so we will always look for problems. We will always create problems for ourselves. Even if you have no problem, you will create a new problem for yourself. And so this sort of falls in line with the same philosophy of suffering, which is you will have suffering. That is one of the most fundamental Buddhist teachings, is that you will have suffering. To live is to suffer. When you were born, you suffered. You suffer all through life, and when you die, you will suffer. So they're two and the same, with the problems and the suffering. So what so many people run into is the issue of, well, how do I get rid of this? How do I get rid of the problems? How do I get rid of the suffering and just enjoy life? Never minding the fact that enjoyment is hand in hand with suffering. You can't have one without the other. There's this moment where you feel so good walking out of your job. There's this moment of nirvana, of peace, of joy, of walking out of your job on a Friday after a long week. And we love that feeling. But that feeling is impossible without the week of work. We love the idea of going on vacations. But those vacations wouldn't be as sweet if you didn't have the hard work back home. And so we're always trying to run away from pain, even though pain is necessary for joy. We're always trying to run away from suffering, even though suffering is hand in hand a part of everything that feels good. They both need each other to survive. And so what we should be doing, instead of trying to run away from pain altogether, because the fear of pain and suffering and problems is only going to really box you in and rob you of the experience of living. What we should be doing is trying to achieve balance. Trying to achieve balance. And what that means is, instead of trying to rid yourself of problems altogether, make sure that you have a problem that's worth the trouble. A lot of the problems that we create for ourselves are simply not worth the trouble. They're not worth what we put ourselves into, the danger, the suffering that we put ourselves into. Realize that no matter what you do, you're going to create a problem for yourself. Even if you have a problem, in order to relieve yourself of that problem, you have to create 10 more problems. If you want to get rid of your car payment in a set amount of time, you have to spend a lot more money in order to do that, which creates problems in other areas of your life where you need your finances. If you want to get out of a bad relationship that you are emotionally tied to, well, you have other problems that you're creating. The issue of separating yourself from someone or a feeling that has tied you to that individual so long, even if the relationship was toxic. So you're always going to create problems for yourself. But the question is, which problem is worth the trouble? Is the problem of a toxic relationship worth the trouble? Or is a problem of distancing yourself from a toxic relationship worth the trouble? Which one? Both of them are going to cause some suffering. But which one is worth it? Again, it's tied to the same idea, philosophy of suffering. You're going to suffer anyways. So find something worth suffering for. There are many people who try to distance themselves from love because they are afraid of the pain that comes with it, or the potential pain. I mean, there is no way out of love where there's not going to be some pain. Love doesn't always feel good. It doesn't always feel good when you're sacrificing. But is it worth it? That's the question. Is the person who you're loving worth sacrificing for? Are they bringing enough into your life that what you have to put out is worth the suffering? But there are many people who try to distance themselves from loving because they're afraid of the pain. If you're not ready for the pain, you're not ready for love. You just want to feel good. But there are growing pains on the path to love, on the path to real, true love. There are growing pains. And then, as I said, there's no way out of it without there being some pain. The relationship ends, someone dies. However, it's going to end. So there's no way out of it without pain. So what is the purpose or the reason to run from it? You only run from love when you're not ready for it. And even then, it'll probably still find you. So problems, they are a part of our lives. They're there from the beginning to the end. But you have a choice, in many regards, on what problems are worth the trouble. Suffering also is a part of our lives from beginning to end. They are hand in hand. So the question is, when you look around your life and you think about the things that are causing you your suffering, is it worth it? And then you never want to get caught in what you've already invested in something. This is called the sunken cost fallacy, and it's what makes people's lives, so often it makes their lives miserable. And the best explanation for that is they've invested so much into something that they are terrified of letting it go. They're terrified of it. They don't want to feel that they lost something, even when holding on to it is going to keep them losing. And we see this so often in relationships where people have invested years into their relationships. So much emotion, so much drama, so much fighting, so much loving and traveling and great experiences, building together. And they're afraid of losing all of that. And the reality is that you can never lose those things. Those were experiences of that moment. But when you're in something that starts to cost you more than what it's worth, then it's time to consider letting it go. What is the outlook in the future? If it's going to cost you in the future more than what it's worth, what does it matter what it was in the past? And the same can be applied to anything in your life that you're attached to in any way. So, what is worth the suffering? And what can I live without? What is worth the problems? And what can I do away with? That's the key. That's how you achieve balance. But if you're always on an extreme side, or any of those sides, you can be someone who says, I'm not going to put myself in any situation so that I don't feel any suffering. Well, then you're suffering because you're not enjoying the fruit, the beautiful side of the risk. And you're robbing yourself of the experience of life.